Welcome to Let's Talk U.S. Immigration. There is a small form that stands between millions of people and a trip to the United States, the ESTA, and almost everyone fills it in the same way. Quickly, hopefully, and with no idea that the easiest part of their whole journey is also where the quietest mistakes are made. It takes a few minutes, you pay a fee, and most of the time a yes comes back before you've finished your coffee. So why do honest, careful people still get refused at this stage? Why do some of them lose money they never needed to spend? And why does one box on this form, answered the wrong way, have the power to shut the door on the United States for the rest of a person's life, when telling the truth would have kept every door open? Today we answer exactly that, not with fear, because for most people this is genuinely quick and painless, but with a handful of things nobody tells a first-timer. What an ESTA really is, how to apply the right way, the mistakes that catch good people out, and the one decision on this form that matters more than all the others combined. Before we begin, everything you are about to hear is designed to inform and educate. Immigration law is complex, and every case is different. What you learn here should always be discussed with a qualified immigration attorney before you take any steps. We are the AI hosts for this series, walking through research carried out on behalf of the team at the law offices of Chris M. Ingram.
Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. And, it's really interesting because millions of people treat this application exactly like we just said, like signing up for a streaming service.
Yeah, like Netflix or something.
Exactly. You plug in your name, hit submit, and you expect instant access. But right beneath the surface of this seemingly simple online form is one of the most sophisticated, completely unforgiving vetting architectures on the planet.
Which sounds terrifying, honestly.
Well, right. But our goal today, walking through this extensive legal research from our team, is to peel back the curtain on how that architecture actually works. Because when you understand the mechanics, like why it asks what it asks and, how it verifies your answers, the anxiety completely evaporates.
You trade the dread for confidence.
Yeah, exactly. You trade that ambient dread for quiet confidence.
I love that.
Yeah.
And we really need to emphasize that one specific promise from the introduction. Because there is one single question on this form, literally one box, that carries the weight of a lifelong consequence.
It really does.
I want you to keep that in the back of your mind as we go, because we are going to break down the psychology of why so many honest people get that specific question disastrously wrong later on.
Right.
But before we get to the stakes of the form, we really need to clarify what the form actually is, because the research shows that almost all catastrophic mistakes begin with this fundamental misunderstanding of what a traveler is holding once they get approved.
That's a perfect place to start. And let's start with the name itself.
Right.
We pronounce it ESTA for ease of conversation, but it's an acronym, right? ESTA.
ESTA.
Right. It stands for the Electronic System for Travel Authorization. And it's that last word, authorization, that's where all the confusion really begins.
Because there's not a visa.
No, not at all. And to understand the ESTA, you really have to understand the geopolitical framework it lives inside, which is the Visa Waiver Program.
Okay, so walk us through that. What exactly is the Visa Waiver Program?
So think back to the 1980s. International travel was just booming. People were flying everywhere. And U.S. embassies in places like, London or Tokyo, they were completely overwhelmed with people applying for simple tourist visas.
Just massive lines around the block.
Exactly. Completely bogged down. So the U.S. government created a reciprocal agreement with certain trusted allied nations. The core concept was basically, we trust your passport issuance security, and your citizens rarely violate our immigration laws, so we will waive the requirement for a physical visa.
Right. Waiver. They're waiving the normal rule. I always pictured it like a VIP wristband.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, like you pay for the VIP access. It lets you skip that massive months-long line at the embassy, and you get to walk right up to the club door at the airport.
The wristband is a helpful visual for sure, but it requires a pretty vital caveat. Having that VIP wristband doesn't mean you own the club, and it absolutely does not guarantee you get inside.
Wait, what?
Right, because the ESTA is not a visa. A traditional visa is a deeply vetted legal document. It's issued after a face-to-face, in-person interview with a consular officer at an embassy.
Right, someone actually looks you in the eye.
Yes. The ESTA, by contrast, is merely a preliminary digital permission slip. That's all it is. It grants you exactly one thing, which is the right to board a carrier, so a plane or a ship headed to the United States.
Oh, wow. So it's literally just permission to travel to the border, not permission to cross it.
Precisely. It just gets you to the booth. The ultimate decision to actually let you in is made entirely by a Customs and Border Protection officer when you arrive on U.S. soil.
That is a huge distinction.
It is. And the danger is that because the ESTA is so quick to obtain, people view it as a finish line. They assume the U.S. government has already fully vetted them, stamped them approved, and welcomed them in.
Right. They think, I paid my money, I got the email, I'm good to go.
Exactly. And that assumption of finality just breeds carelessness. They rush through the legal document, treating it with the same gravity as, like, checking out on Amazon.
Which sets the stage for a seriously rude awakening at the airport. Okay, so getting the ESTA is the starting line, not the finish line.
Yes.
So let's look at the gatekeepers of this starting line. Because this fast track isn't open to everyone, right? The rules governing who can even use it are remarkably rigid, according to our attorney's research.
Very rigid. The initial gate is your citizenship. You have to be a citizen of a visa waiver program participating country.
Which is who? Mostly.
Mostly we are talking about the UK, most European Union nations, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and, well, a handful of others. But the key here is that it is strictly citizenship, not residency.
Oh, interesting. So if I live in London.
Right. If you live in London, you have a flat there, you pay taxes there, but you hold a passport from a non-participating country, like, say, India or Brazil,
Yep.
you cannot use the ESTA, period. You must get a traditional visa.
Wow, okay. So residency means nothing to this system. It's all about the passport in your hand.
Exactly.
So let's assume you hold the right passport. The second hurdle the research outlines is the purpose of the trip.
Right.
The ESTA allows for tourism, temporary business-like, attending a conference or a negotiation, or transiting through the U.S. to a final destination.
Yes. Very strictly defined categories.
But the third hurdle is where I really want to push back because it seems to catch a lot of people completely off guard. And that's the 90-day limit.
Ah, yes. It is a 90-day maximum stay, not 3 months, 90 days.
Right, but I mean, let's think about how people actually travel. What if a traveler is looking at flight prices and they realize, hey, it's significantly cheaper to fly out on day 94 instead of day 89?
They cannot do it.
But I think the natural human instinct is to assume there's a little bureaucratic flexibility there. Like, I'm a tourist, I'm pumping money into the U.S. economy. Surely they give you a 4-day grace period to pack your bags. I mean, what is the actual harm?
Well, the harm is that you will trigger a mechanism that permanently strips you of your visa waiver privileges.
Wait, permanently? Just for a few days?
Permanently. The U.S. immigration system does not negotiate, and it absolutely does not operate on grace periods. When you use the ESTA, you are basically entering a legally binding contract.
Okay.
In exchange for the convenience of skipping that long embassy interview, you waive certain legal rights. That's why it's called a waiver. You waive the right to contest deportation if you overstay. So if you stay 91 days, you have violated federal immigration law. You instantly become an overstayer.
Wow. So that slightly cheaper flight on day 94 ends up costing you your ability to ever travel visa-free to the U.S. again.
Forever. If you do that, you will be required to apply for a traditional B1, B2 visa at an embassy for the rest of your life. And every single time you apply, you will have to explain to a federal officer why you violated the terms of your previous entry.
That is just, I mean, that's brutal.
It is strict. And furthermore, those 90 days cannot be extended under normal circumstances, and you cannot transition to another status while you're there.
Like changing your mind and staying.
Right. You cannot fly in on an ESTA for a holiday and suddenly decide to enroll in a university. You cannot take a job with a U.S. employer. The extreme rigidity of this program is the necessary counterweight to its incredible convenience. If you don't fit the exact criteria perfectly, you are just at the wrong door entirely.
Okay, that makes sense. The government is saying, we'll make it easy, but you have to play exactly by our rules.
Precisely.
And that rigidity extends to the physical passport itself, right?
Okay.
Because the research from our legal team makes a huge point of highlighting the e-passport requirement.
Yes, the e-passport is mandatory.
So say I'm holding a passport from a waiver country, like France. It's totally valid, not expired. But if it doesn't have that specific electronic chip in it, the system rejects me. Why does the U.S. care so much about the actual physical hardware of my passport book?
Because of the massive biometric security infrastructure that's been deployed globally since the early 2000s, The electronic passport, or e-passport, contains a passive RFID chip. It's usually embedded right there in the cover of the book.
Like a little microchip.
Yes, and that chip stores a cryptographic digital version of your biographic data and, crucially, your photograph. It allows for a highly secure digital handshake between your travel document and international security databases.
Oh, I see. So it's not just a border guard checking a printed list of names on a piece of paper. It's a computer mathematically verifying that the physical document hasn't been forged or tampered with.
Correct. The data on that chip is locked. And that leads directly into one of the newer technical requirements that really surprises seasoned travelers when they go to renew their ESTA these days.
The live selfie.
Yes, the mandatory live selfie.
I found this part of the study fascinating. You're sitting on your couch, applying on your smartphone, and the app demands you scan your passport, and then you have to take a live photo of your face right then and there.
Right.
How does my phone camera talking to a government website actually increase security? I mean, they already have my passport photo on file, don't they?
They do, but it's a mechanism called liveness detection, paired with biometric matching.
Liveness detection. Sounds sci-fi.
It does, but it's very real. When you tap your phone against your passport, your phone's NFC reader powers up that passive chip in your passport cover. It extracts the highly secure, encrypted digital photo that's stored inside it.
Okay.
Then, the live selfie you take with your phone's camera is mathematically mapped. The software measures the exact distance between your eyes, the geometry of your jawline, the shape of your nose, and it compares that live map directly against the verified government-issued data pulled from the chip.
I had a fantastic experience working with the law offices of Chris Ingram on my EB-1A petition. From start to finish, the team showed exceptional professionalism, clarity, and care. My caseworker, Yenny Ronchina, and case supervisor, Miguel Farias, were both incredibly thorough and knowledgeable. They took the time to understand the nuances of my case, guided me through the evidence preparation process, and answered every question I had with patience and confidence. I wholeheartedly recommend Chris Ingram's team to anyone navigating the complex U.S. immigration process. Their experience, integrity, and personal touch truly make a difference.
So it ensures that the person literally holding the phone in their living room is the actual human being authorized to hold that passport.
Exactly. You can't just steal someone's passport out of their bag at a cafe and type your numbers into a web browser anymore.
Because you wouldn't pass the selfie check.
Right. That technical biometric verification is completely mandatory now. It prevents stolen, otherwise valid passports from being used by lookalikes.
That is incredibly advanced, which honestly brings us perfectly to the financial reality of this whole process, the cost.
Yes, the fee.
Let's break down the fee, because $40.27 is such a bizarrely specific number. I mean, if you look at older travel blogs from a few years ago, they talk about paying $14 or maybe $21.
Yes, it used to be much cheaper, but the current fee structure is a perfect example of bureaucratic legislative mechanics. It is not just an arbitrary number someone pulled out of thin air to annoy tourists.
It certainly feels like it when you see the 27 cents.
I know, but it's actually split into two very distinct legislative mandates. The first part of that $40.27 is a flat $4 processing charge.
Just $4. And that covers what? The actual server costs, the automated database pings, the basic administrative overhead.
Yes, exactly. And the catch is you pay that $4 the absolute moment you submit the application, regardless of the outcome.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Even if you are instantly refused by the system, the government keeps that $4 for running the background check. It's non-refundable.
Okay, that makes sense. You're paying for the processing power.
Right. Now, the second part, which is much larger, is the $36.27 authorization charge.
But you only pay that part if you actually get the green light, right?
Correct. The authorization charge is strictly conditional on approval. If you're denied, you aren't charged that portion.
But why the 27 cents? That's the part that gets me.
So the reason it's such a wildly specific number traces back to something called the Travel Promotion Act of 2009. The U.S. Congress mandated a fee to fund a public-private partnership called Brand USA.
Brand USA, what's that?
It's an organization that promotes international tourism to the United States. They run ad campaigns abroad to get people to visit. Over the years, Congress mandated that this promotional fee be adjusted for inflation. tying it to a very specific consumer price index formula.
Oh, math.
Exactly. When you run a base fee through years and years of compounding bureaucratic inflation adjustments, you don't get a nice clean $50. You end up with a highly specific non-round number, like $36.27.
So it's not just a cash grab at the border, it's a very specific legislated formula.
Yes.
Okay, but what about families? Because this is where the cost really balloons. Let's say I have a 6-month-old baby. They aren't attending a business conference. They certainly aren't funding international tourism in any meaningful way. Do I really have to pay the full $40.27 for an infant?
You do. Every single penny of it.
Wait, $40? Even a baby needs their own full application.
They absolutely do. There are no family packages. There are no group discounts, no 2-for-1 specials.
That seems harsh.
Well, you have to remember the perspective of the border security apparatus. The system does not see a cute family unit. It sees individual foreign nationals seeking entry to sovereign territory.
Right. Just names on a manifest.
Exactly. That 6-month-old requires their own unique background check, their own biometric verification, and their own database queries across Interpol and whatever else. The administrative burden on the computer system is identical whether the traveler is 6 months old or 60 years old. So the fee is identical.
$40.27 per human.
Period.
Period. But, knowing the exact price actually serves as a massive protective shield against our next pitfall.
Okay.
Because if you understand that the fee is firmly locked by Congress at exactly $40.27, you are basically immune to the copycat arbitrage market.
Oh, this is one of the most frustrating aspects of the entire process, honestly, because it preys entirely on people's anxiety and their reliance on search engines.
It's wild. Let's picture this scenario for the listener. You remember, say, on a Tuesday, that you need your ESTA for a flight next week. Pull out your phone, you open your browser, and you type "Get US ESTA" into Google or whatever. You click the very first sponsored link at the top of the page.
Always the sponsored link.
Always. And the website you land on is completely covered in American flags, bald eagles, pictures of the Statue of Liberty, and all this highly official-sounding bureaucratic language.
Right.
You spend 20 minutes filling out the form very carefully, and then you get to the checkout screen, and it asks for $95 or $120. If the fee is locked by Congress, how on earth is this website legally charging triple the price?
Because you didn't actually click on a government website. You clicked on a third-party private middleman. There is only one official authorized portal in the entire world to submit this application, and that is the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's specific website.
Which is esta.cbp.dhs.gov.
Yes. Or their official mobile app. That is it.
So if I'm looking at a URL and it doesn't end in .gov, I am in the wrong place.
100%.
But how are these copycats not shut down for fraud immediately? Isn't it super illegal to impersonate the federal government?
It is illegal to impersonate them, which is why these sites operate in a very specific, very clever legal gray area.
Yeah.
They invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in search engine optimization to outrank the actual government site on Google.
Wow.
Yeah. They make their sites look as authoritative as possible without officially crossing the strict legal line of impersonation. If you scroll all the way to the very bottom of their page and you look in the footer, buried in tiny light gray font.
Oh, a fine print.
Always the fine print. You will find a disclaimer stating that they are a private travel consultancy not affiliated with the U.S. government.
So they basically claim they're providing a quote-unquote service.
Exactly. When you pay them $100, what they actually do is take the data you typed into their web form, turn around, open a new browser tab to the real.gov website, paste your data in, pay the actual $40.27 fee with their corporate credit card, and just pocket the remaining $60 as an expediting or processing fee.
So this is basically like paying a scalper $100 to stand in line for a free concert ticket for you while you hand them all your highly sensitive passport details.
That is exactly what it is. Pure arbitrage.
But surely they expedite it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, do they have a dedicated pipeline or a fast track to the government servers?
Absolutely not. They have zero special access. None. They cannot speed up the processing time by a single millisecond, and they certainly do not increase your chances of approval.
So you're literally paying for nothing.
Worse than nothing, because the financial markup isn't even the biggest problem. The true danger here, and our attorneys stress this heavily, is the catastrophic risk you are taking with your personally identifiable information, your PII.
Because to fill out the form, You literally have to hand over the keys to your identity.
Think about the payload of data required for an ESTA. It's your full legal name, your exact date of birth, your physical home address, your parents' full names, your exact passport number, the issue date, the expiry date.
It is a complete identity theft starter kit.
It really is. When you use the official DHS website, that data is transmitted through heavily encrypted federal-grade servers. But when you use a copycat site run by some anonymous LLC operating out of a strip mall somewhere, you have absolutely no idea how securely they are storing your data.
Right. Who has access to their servers?
Exactly. Or if they are simply turning around and selling your data to foreign data brokers to make a second profit, you are voluntarily introducing a massive security vulnerability into your life for absolutely zero benefit.
And beyond the security risk, it introduces a massive risk of clerical errors, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. The more hands your data passes through, the higher the failure rate. If their automated web scraping software glitches and it drops just one single digit from your passport number while it's transferring your info to the real DHS site, your application is refused.
And you would have absolutely no idea why, because the data you typed on their screen looked correct when you checked it.
Exactly. You'd be totally in the dark.
So the rule is absolute. Type the .gov address yourself. Do not rely on the search engine query to find it.
Type it directly into the URL bar.
Okay. Now, let's say you are safely on the encrypted government site. We arrive at the actual mechanics of filling out the form. And according to the research, this is where we see just a staggering number of self-inflicted wounds.
It's heartbreaking, really.
Yeah, our legal team notes that purely administrative typos cause a massive percentage of needless refusals. Just simple human error.
Well, you have to realize that the Customs and Border Protection's automated vetting architecture is entirely literal. It relies on exact string matching.
Exact string matching, meaning what?
Meaning the computer does not possess human intuition. It does not make contextual leaps or assumptions about what you meant to type.
Let me give you a hypothetical to illustrate how brittle this is for the listener. Let's say I have a friend who goes by Dave. Everyone calls him Dave. His email is dave@whatever.com. His business cards say Dave. But his passport, the actual legal document, says David.
Right.
So Dave is watching TV, he's a little distracted, and he fills out the ESTA form using the name Dave. What happens?
That application will be instantly refused.
Instantly. Just over those 2 letters.
Instantly. The system pulls the name Dave, bounces it against the biometric passport database that has the document registered to David, and it immediately recognizes a discrepancy.
But any human border officer looking at that would instantly know Dave is just short for David.
Of course they would. But the string matching algorithm does not. It sees a critical mismatch between the declared identity on the form and the cryptographic identity on the passport chip. And it throws a fatal exception. It just says no.
Man. You know, it's like bubbling in a Scantron test in high school. It completely doesn't matter if you wrote an eloquent, totally correct essay in the margins of the paper. If you bubble in the wrong circle with your number 2 pencil, the grading machine fails you. The DHS computer only reads the precise bubbles.
That Scantron analogy is perfect for understanding the machine-readable zone.
The MRZ.
Yes. This is perhaps the greatest technical tip in the entire study for avoiding a typo. Let's say you have a complex name. Maybe it includes a hyphen, an apostrophe, or letters specific to a certain language, like a German umlaut or a Spanish NI.
Right, because the U.S. computer system is built entirely on a standard 26-letter English alphabet keyboard.
Sure.
So if my name has an umlaut, how do I translate that? Do I just guess?
Never, ever guess. You look at the machine-readable zone, the MRZ. If you open your passport and look at the very bottom of the photo page, there are 2 lines of text filled with names, numbers, and those little arrows or chevrons.
Oh, yeah, the crazy code at the bottom.
That's the MRZ. It is a global standard set by the International Civil Aviation Organization. The passport agency in your home country has already done the heavy lifting of standardizing your specific name into the 26-letter alphabet within those 2 lines.
Oh, that makes sense. So if I have an umlaut in my actual printed name above, the MRZ will show exactly how the U.S. computer wants it spelled.
Exactly. Usually, it translates an umlaut by adding an E after the vowel, but whatever is down there in the MRZ, you must type your name exactly as it appears in that chevron-filled bottom section. That is the exact string of text the U.S. computer is looking for.
You have to treat this like routing a massive wire transfer at a bank.
Sure.
Slow, exact double check.
Yes. And this demand for exactness is exactly why filling out applications for a group is so incredibly dangerous.
Oh, do it for the whole family.
Right. The cascading error is a classic pitfall here. Picture a mother who sits down at the computer to do the applications for her family of 4. She holds her own passport, she perfectly transcribes the MRZ, and she gets approved right away.
Awesome. Step 1 done.
Then she moves to her husband's application, but his passport is upstairs in a drawer. She doesn't feel like walking up there to find the physical book, so she just relies on her memory.
Uh-oh.
Right. She guesses his exact issue date, or maybe she misses the fact that his middle name is spelled out fully on his passport rather than just being an initial like he usually writes it.
And his application gets flagged.
It gets flagged and refused, and suddenly an entire $10,000 family vacation is in jeopardy because of a totally avoidable clerical assumption.
It is terrifying.
It is. The rule is you must treat every single application as an isolated, highly secure data entry task. You have to have the physical passport open on the desk next to the keyboard every single time. No exceptions.
You know, it's wild how much anxiety and potential financial loss can be completely neutralized just by slowing down and understanding the plumbing of the system. Honestly, if these plain language walkthroughs are helping you avoid mistakes, take a second to follow or subscribe to the show wherever you are listening right now. It genuinely helps us reach more people who are trying to get this right the first time. We want the next nervous traveler to find this info before they make a costly error, not after they've lost their money or compromised their trip.
I couldn't agree more. Slowing down is the ultimate defense against the automated system.
Okay, so we've survived the search engines, we avoided the copycats, we've perfectly transcribed our Scantron bubbles from the MRZ, and the form is going really well.
So far, so good.
And then the traveler scrolls down to the eligibility section.
Yes, here we are.
This pays off the hook from the very beginning of our deep dive. We mentioned one box, one decision that matters more than all the others combined. We have arrived at the honesty questions.
The climax of the form. This is where the stakes elevate from a frustrating administrative typo to profound, permanent legal consequences.
What are these questions actually asking?
The eligibility section consists of questions probing your deep background. They ask about prior criminal convictions, history of communicable diseases, whether you have ever overstayed a visa in the past, whether you have ever been deported, or if you've been refused entry to the U.S. previously.
So these are the heavy, uncomfortable questions.
They are heavily designed to be uncomfortable, and this is the moment where the cold, automated system collides with human nature. The absolute rule here, and I cannot stress this enough, is that you must answer truthfully, even if you are absolutely terrified that the truth might disqualify you.
But the research points to a very specific psychological phenomenon that happens to people in this exact moment, doesn't it?
It does. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of a traveler to really understand that psychology. Let's say we have a 35-year-old traveler. They are a successful professional, maybe a parent, an upstanding member of their community.
Totally normal, law-abiding person.
Right. But when they were 19 years old at university, they made a stupid mistake and got a minor conviction for something like shoplifting or maybe minor drug possession.
Okay.
Now it's been 15 years. They haven't even thought about it in a decade. Their home country might have even expunged the record locally because it was so minor and so long ago. Now they are staring at their phone and the ESTA asks, "Have you ever been convicted of a crime?"
The overwhelming human instinct in that moment is what the research calls the fearful lie.
The fearful lie, exactly, because they begin to rationalize.
Right, they tell themselves, it was a lifetime ago, I was a dumb kid, it was incredibly minor, it doesn't define who I am today, and if I click yes to this huge, scary government form, the system's going to deny me, and I'm going to ruin my family's entire vacation over a mistake I made as a teenager.
That is exactly the internal monologue. So driven by that fear and a desperate desire to present a clean image, they quietly tick. No, they hold their breath and they hit submit.
Okay, so what happens next? Because if the system is as powerful as we've said, it should instantly reject them, right?
Not always. And this is the trap. Quite often, the system comes back approved in minutes.
Wait, really? It actually lets the lie through?
It can initially. And this is vital to understand about how international database queries work. The automated ESTA system relies heavily at the initial web stage on your self-certification for certain historical background elements.
To trust you.
Temporarily. It runs checks, obviously, But international criminal databases, like the databases shared between the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, which is the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, they are incredibly vast and complex.
Right, millions of records.
Yes. And they are not always perfectly synchronized for a millisecond real-time query on a web form. So the traveler gets the approval screen, they feel this massive wave of relief, they think, thank God I got away with it, they didn't see it.
But they didn't get away with it.
They absolutely did not. By ticking no when the historical factual answer was yes, they have just committed a very specific violation of U.S. immigration law, specifically under Section 212 of the Immigration and Nationality Act.
Which is what, legally speaking?
They have committed willful misrepresentation of a material fact to obtain an immigration benefit.
Misrepresentation. Wow, so it's not just viewed as a whoops, I forgot moment. It is a severe legal finding of fraud.
It is a devastating finding. The penalty for willful misrepresentation is a permanent, lifelong ban from entering the United States.
So the cover-up is actually far, far worse than the original crime. Lying turns a fixable speed bump into an impenetrable brick wall.
That is exactly it. Let's trace the mechanics of how they actually get caught. Because if the system approved them online, how does the U.S. eventually find out about a 15-year-old minor conviction from another country?
Right. How does the truth catch up to them?
Because the initial web approval is a soft check. The hard check happens when you actually travel. Airlines are legally required to transmit API advanced passenger information and PNR passenger name records to the Department of Homeland Security hours before the flight takes off.
Okay, so they know exactly who is coming.
Yes. As that plane is flying over the Atlantic Ocean, the CBP's back-end systems are running deep, complex, slow queries against updated intelligence databases, Interpol records, and bilateral data sharing agreements.
Oh, wow. So they have hours to dig deep while you're trapped in a metal tube.
Exactly. By the time that traveler lands and walks off the jet bridge, the border officer's screen has already flagged the discrepancy. The trap is set before they even hit customs.
That is the core takeaway of our legal team's research here. The system will find out. So let's look at the two travelers scenario from the study to really cement the logic of why the truth protects you.
This is my favorite part of the research because it makes it so clear. Let's picture two travelers, Traveler A and Traveler B. They have identical backgrounds. Both have that exact same minor 15-year-old conviction from when they were 19.
Okay, identical pasts.
Traveler A gets to the question on the form. They feel the fear, but they decide to maintain their integrity. They answer truthfully. They tick yes. They submit the form. Almost immediately, the system refuses their ESTA.
Which feels devastating in the moment. I mean, they're probably thinking, I knew I shouldn't have told the truth.
It does feel awful. They have lost the privilege of the express lane. But, and this is the crucial distinction, the door to the United States is not closed to them. The underlying issue, that minor conviction from 15 years ago, is very likely recoverable under U.S. law.
The law provides remedies.
Exactly. Traveler A simply applies for a regular B-2 tourist visa at the U.S. Embassy. They go in for an interview. They stand in front of a consular officer and explain the context of the old conviction.
I engaged the law offices of Chris M. Ingram for my EB-1A visa application. The firm's systematic and thorough approach to gathering evidence, developing case arguments, and client communication is highly impressive. My experience with them has been outstanding and has exceeded all my expectations. I am deeply thankful to Rhea, Judith, and all the staff members who worked directly and indirectly on my case. The entire team at the law offices of Chris M. Ingram is professional, well-informed, and exceptionally supportive. I highly recommend Chris Ingram's firm for their expertise, responsiveness, and unwavering dedication to clients, which greatly eased my anxiety and ensured our green card success.
The officer sees that they have been a model citizen for 15 years, that they've paid their debt to society, and grants a waiver of inadmissibility.
And they issue the visa in their passport.
Right. Traveler A goes on their vacation. It took longer, yes, but the system rewarded their honesty with a legal remedy. The door stayed open.
Now let's look at Traveler B.
Right. Traveler B feels the exact same fear, but gives into it. They tick no, they lie, they get the automated ESTA approval online, they fly to the U.S. totally relieved.
But while they're in the air, the deep database query catches the old conviction.
Yes. They land, they walk up to the border booth, hand over their passport, and the officer's screen flashes red.
The trap snaps shut.
Exactly. The officer pulls up their original ESTA application and sees the lie in black and white. Traveler B ticked no, but the database says yes. So Traveler B is pulled into a secondary inspection room.
The dreaded back room.
And here is the true tragedy of the situation. Traveler B is no longer facing a problem about a waivable 15-year-old minor conviction. That's irrelevant now. They are now facing a federal charge of actively defrauding the U.S. government today.
Oh my God. They took a solvable problem and literally manufactured a permanent ban out of thin air.
Yes, they did. The officer cancels their ESTA on the spot, detains them, puts them on the next flight home, and issues a permanent ban for misrepresentation. The honest answer kept the ultimate door open for Traveler A. The lie permanently closed it for Traveler B.
It is just a staggering dynamic because it runs so contrary to how we normally operate in society, Like the instinct is always to present the cleanest, most unblemished version of ourselves to authority figures.
Right, like a job interview.
Exactly. But here, the system prioritizes truth far, far above cleanliness.
Because the entire visa waiver program is built entirely on the currency of trust. If you demonstrate that you cannot be trusted to fill out a simple web form truthfully, the U.S. government will absolutely not trust you to enter their sovereign territory. It's really that simple.
So what if a traveler genuinely isn't sure? Let's say they went to court years ago, but they just paid a fine and went home. They don't actually know if it qualifies legally as a conviction under U.S. law. Should they just guess no and hope for the best?
Never, ever guess on the eligibility questions. If you are uncertain how a past legal incident translates to U.S. immigration definitions, you must pause. Stop the application right there.
Don't just click through it.
Do not click through. This is exactly when you seek professional legal counsel. Have an attorney review the specific court documents from your past. Let them advise you on whether the truthful answer is yes or no. Because guessing no out of hope is legally indistinguishable from a deliberate lie if the factual answer turns out to be yes. The system does not care if you were just confused.
Okay, that makes total sense.
Mhm.
So we have navigated the deepest waters here. We understand that misrepresentation is the absolute ultimate danger. So having established that, let's collect and summarize a few other avoidable pitfalls that trip people up.
Let's do it.
Because it seems like if you tell the truth and you spell your name right, the remaining issues are purely about, assumptions and timing.
That's incredibly accurate. Taking agency and just respecting the administrative process neutralizes almost every remaining pitfall. We've covered the typos and the copycats, but a massive issue is what we call the hubris of the last-minute application.
Right, because the system is usually instant, right? You hit submit, you get approved. So the modern traveler just assumes it is guaranteed to be instant. They book a non-refundable flight for tomorrow morning, and they sit down at midnight tonight to apply for their ESTA.
And if they hit submit and the screen returns the status pending, which happens a lot, they are not getting on that flight tomorrow morning.
So why does an application go to pending? Is a human actually reading it right then, or is the server just slow?
It's usually a false positive in the database matching.
A false positive.
Yeah. Say your name is John Smith or some similarly common name in your home country. The automated algorithm might ping a hit against a global watch list of individuals with the exact same name. The automated system isn't authorized to clear you when there's a potential match. It just freezes.
So what happens then?
It routes your application to the National Targeting Center. There, an actual human CBP officer has to manually pull up your file. They have to cross-reference your birth date, your passport number, and your parents' names against the watch list entry to definitively confirm you are not the dangerous John Smith on the list.
And that manual review takes time. They aren't doing that in 5 minutes.
Not at all. The official guidance states it can take up to 72 hours. And sometimes, if there is a huge backlog of applications, it can take even longer. Booking a flight before securing the legal authorization to travel is a terrible gamble. You should apply weeks before you book a flight.
Always apply first. Okay, another timing issue I want to ask about.
Yeah.
Assuming an old approval is still valid. Now, an approved ESTA is generally good for 2 years, right? I can take multiple trips, like to New York, Miami, Chicago, within that 2-year window.
Generally, yes. It allows for multiple short trips within that 2-year validity period. But there are crucial, absolute exceptions that will instantly kill an active ESTA.
Like what?
Well, the authorization is tied entirely to the specific physical passport used to apply.
The chip we talked about earlier.
Right. So if you lose your passport or it expires naturally and you get a new one.
Your old ESTA is completely dead, even if it had a year left on the clock.
Exactly. New passport number means you need a completely new ESTA application. Similarly, if you get married and change your legal name on your passport, the old ESTA is invalid. If you acquire dual citizenship, you need a new one.
Okay, but what if my background changes? Say I get my ESTA, I take a trip to Disney World, go back home, and then a year later I get convicted of a crime.
That is the most critical trigger of all. The moment your answer to one of the honesty questions changes, your old ESTA is legally invalid.
Because the answers aren't true anymore.
Exactly. The no you ticked for criminal convictions a year ago is no longer true today. If you attempt to travel on that stale ESTA, the database query will catch the new conviction while you're flying, and the border officer will view it as traveling on fraudulent grounds. You must reapply and answer truthfully based on your current reality.
It's all about ensuring the data you provided perfectly reflects reality at the exact moment you intend to travel.
Exactly. That is the whole point of the system.
Okay. So you've navigated all of this. You submitted the perfect, honest application. You waited for the manual review if you had to. You get the email that says approved. You pack your bags, you fly across the ocean, and you land. This brings us to the final door.
The arrival. This is the piece of the puzzle that often catches first-timers by surprise, because they think the hard part is over.
Right. The ESTA got us on the plane. But now we are standing in the arrivals hall, jet-lagged, shuffling toward the Customs and Border Protection booth.
Right. And the CBP officer sitting in that booth possesses the ultimate final authority to decide whether you cross the threshold into the United States. Under Section 291 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, the legal burden of proof is entirely on the traveler to prove they are eligible to enter.
Which means?
It means your approved ESTA is not a shield against the officer's scrutiny. It is merely the prerequisite for the conversation.
Which sounds incredibly intimidating. I mean, you did all the work, you paid the fee, you flew 10 hours, and one single person could just say nope and send you back.
Statistically, the vast majority of these interactions are very brief and totally routine. But you must approach the booth with the right mindset. The officer is primarily evaluating your intent.
What exactly are they looking for? Like, what are the red flags?
They are looking for consistency and clarity. When you step up to the booth, be calm. If they ask, what is the purpose of your trip? Do not launch into a rambling, highly defensive 20-minute backstory about your life.
Just answer the question.
Be concise. I am here for a 2-week holiday to visit the Grand Canyon, or I am attending a 4-day tech conference. That's it.
Keep it simple and make sure it aligns with what you put on the form.
Absolutely. If your ESTA indicates tourism, but you tell the officer you are planning to scout out neighborhoods to move to, or you're going to look for a job while you're here, you will be denied entry for immigrant intent right on the spot.
Because tourism means tourism.
Right. And you should carry supporting documentation to lower the friction. Have a printed copy of your return flight ticket ready. This is the absolute strongest proof that you intend to leave within the 90 days.
Because it shows you have a plan to go home.
Yes. Have your hotel reservations accessible. If you are there for business, have the conference invitation. You may not even need to show them, but having them instantly available demonstrates legitimate intent.
It's just about showing up prepared.
Prepared, truthful, and consistent. If an officer asks a clarifying question, answer it plainly. They are trained interrogators. They are far more reassured by a simple, truthful traveler than by someone acting evasive or overly chatty because they are nervous.
So we've really walked through the entire architecture today. We established that this isn't a visa, but a strict 90-day fast track.
Yes.
We explored the biometric reality of the e-passport and the precise legislated nature of the $40.27 fee. We exposed those search engine copycats and the absolute necessity of mimicking your Scantron-like machine-readable zone.
And we dug really deep into the psychology and the permanent consequences of those honesty questions, revealing how international data sharing ensures that a truthful answer is always safer than a fearful lie.
And finally, we landed at the border, recognizing that the ESTA only gets you to the officer. Your consistency is what actually gets you into the country.
It's a journey, but it's manageable if you respect the rules.
It really is. Before we wrap up, I want to turn this back to you, the listener. Of everything we unpacked today, what surprised you the most? Was it the fact that the back-end algorithms are so rigid that Dave and David can trigger a refusal? Was it the realization that the copycat websites are legally pocketing your money while risking your data? Or was it the sheer danger of misrepresentation, how ticking no out of fear can create a lifelong ban? Drop a comment or reach out and let us know. Because the detail that surprised you today is very likely the exact detail the next traveler needs to hear to avoid a disaster.
Sharing this knowledge is truly the most effective way to strip the anxiety out of the entire process.
So let us leave you with the heart of it. Applying for an ESTA is usually quick and easy, and it should be. But the small things matter. Copy every detail exactly from your passport, use only the official government website, and above all, answer every honesty question truthfully, even the ones that make you nervous, because an honest answer keeps every future door open while a lie can close them all. And remember, an approved ESTA gets you to the border. Showing up truthful, clear, and consistent is what gets you through it. If something in your past gives you pause, the smartest move is to find out where you stand before you apply, not after. The strategies in this discussion are for educational purposes only. Your situation is unique, and the law offices of Chris M. Ingram are here to help you understand your specific options. If you would like a clear, honest assessment before you travel, visit breakthroughosa.com and reach out for a free consultation. And if you have already been refused, listen to our companion episode on the 8 reasons an ESTA is denied and what to do about each one. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.
But as you log off and prepare for your next journey, consider this one final thought. We spend so much time worrying about the physical borders between nations, but the most rigid border you cross in this entire process is the one inside your own mind. The border between a fearful guess and a confident truth. Which one are you packing in your carry-on?